My sister testified I was mentally unfit to care for my elderly mother. I played recordings of her trying to manipulate Mom into changing her will. The court clerk called my name at 9:15 on a Thursday morning, and I walked into the courtroom knowing my sister was about to destroy me. Vanessa sat at the plaintiff's table with her attorney, a sharp-faced woman named Diane Keller, who specialized in elder law and guardianship cases. My mother wasn't present. At 78, with advancing dementia, she'd been deemed unable to attend the competency hearing that would decide her fate. Vanessa wore a navy suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her dark hair pulled into a severe bun that made her look older and more authoritative. She didn't look at me as I took my seat across the aisle with my court-appointed attorney, a public defender named Russell Park, who'd been assigned to my case 3 days ago and had barely reviewed the file. Judge Monica Brennan presided, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and reading glasses that made her look like someone's kind grandmother. But her reputation suggested otherwise. She was known for making swift, decisive rulings in guardianship cases and rarely reversing course once she'd made up her mind. Vanessa's petition claimed I was mentally unstable, financially irresponsible, and emotionally abusive toward our mother. She wanted full guardianship, which would give her complete control over Mom's medical care, living arrangements, and most importantly, her estate worth approximately $2 million. The opening statements laid out two completely different versions of reality. Diane Keller painted me as a manipulative daughter who'd isolated our mother from family, mismanaged her medications, and created an unsafe living environment. She claimed I'd moved Mom into my small apartment to control her and prevent Vanessa from visiting. She suggested I was after Mom's money and had been pressuring her to change her will in my favor. Russell's opening was weaker, stating simply that I'd been Mom's primary caregiver for 3 years, that I loved her deeply, and that Vanessa's petition was motivated by greed rather than genuine concern. He didn't have evidence to back up his claims because we'd had no time to prepare. Vanessa testified first, taking the stand with perfect posture and a practiced expression of sorrowful concern. Diane led her through a narrative of my supposed incompetence and cruelty. Vanessa described visiting Mom's apartment and finding it dirty and cluttered. She claimed Mom had lost significant weight under my care. She said Mom had confided that I yelled at her frequently and threatened to put her in a nursing home if she didn't cooperate. Vanessa's voice broke with emotion as she described feeling helpless to protect our mother from my abuse. She'd tried talking to me, she said, but I'd become hostile and cut off her access. Diane entered photographs into evidence showing Mom's apartment in disarray. Vanessa explained the photos were taken during her last visit 6 months ago. The images showed stacks of newspapers, unwashed dishes, and general clutter. Russell's cross-examination was brief and ineffective. He asked if Vanessa had offered to help clean or provide any assistance. She said she'd offered repeatedly, but I'd refused. He asked about the 6-month gap in visits. Vanessa explained that I'd become so hostile she'd feared for her own safety and had stopped coming. She'd been trying to help from a distance, calling Mom regularly, but I'd started screening the calls. Russell had no way to disprove any of it. The second witness was Dr. Philip Crane, Mom's physician for the past 20 years. Diane asked him about Mom's condition during her last appointment, which had been 2 months earlier. Dr. Crane testified that Mom showed signs of progressing dementia, including memory loss and confusion. More concerning, he said, was that Mom appeared anxious and underweight. When he'd asked about her home situation, Mom had seemed reluctant to answer. He'd noted in her chart that he was concerned about potential caregiver stress and possible neglect. Dr. Crane's testimony was devastating. He was a respected physician with no apparent bias, simply reporting his medical observations. Russell asked if Dr. Crane had observed any signs of physical abuse. The doctor said no. He asked if Mom had explicitly complained about her care. Dr. Crane admitted she hadn't. But the damage was done. A medical professional had documented concerns about Mom's care under my supervision. During the lunch recess, I sat in the courthouse cafeteria, unable to eat. Russell reviewed his notes and told me the case wasn't going well. Vanessa's evidence was circumstantial but compelling. We needed something concrete to counter her narrative. I explained that Vanessa was lying about everything. The apartment was cluttered because Mom was a hoarder and refused to let me throw things away. She'd lost weight because her dementia made her forget to eat, and I was struggling to get adequate nutrition into her despite my best efforts. The phone screening was because Vanessa's calls upset Mom, not because I was isolating her. Russell asked if I had any evidence to support my version. I said I had something better than evidence. I had recordings. For the past 3 months, I'd been recording my interactions with Mom and with Vanessa during her phone calls. I'd started doing it after Vanessa had made veiled threats about taking Mom away from me. I'd wanted proof of how I actually treated Mom versus how Vanessa behaved. Russell's expression shifted from defeated to cautiously hopeful. He asked if the recordings were legally obtained. I explained that I lived in a one-party consent state, and I'd been present for every recording, so yes, they were legal. Russell asked what was on the recordings. I told him there were hours of audio showing me patiently caring for Mom, helping her with meals, medications, and daily activities. My tone was always gentle and encouraging, never the hostile yelling Vanessa had described. More importantly, I had recordings of Vanessa's phone conversations with Mom where she repeatedly tried to manipulate her into changing her will to exclude me entirely. Russell wanted to hear them immediately. We found an empty conference room and I pulled out my phone where I'd stored everything. The first recording I played was from 6 weeks earlier. Vanessa's voice came through clearly, talking to Mom on speakerphone. "Mom, I'm worried about Diana. I think she might be stealing from you. Have you checked your bank accounts lately?" Mom's confused voice responded, asking what Vanessa meant. Vanessa continued, "I'm just saying you should probably change your will. Make sure your money goes to someone responsible, like me. I'd take care of everything properly. Diana's just going to waste it all." Mom sounded distressed, saying she didn't want to talk about wills. Vanessa pressed harder, her voice taking on an edge. "Mom, I'm trying to help you. Diana's not capable of managing your affairs. You need to protect yourself. Let me set up an appointment with my lawyer. We'll get this sorted out." The recording continued for another 10 minutes, with Vanessa using increasingly aggressive tactics to pressure Mom into disinheriting me. Russell's expression changed as he listened. This was exactly what we needed. Proof that Vanessa's guardianship petition wasn't about Mom's welfare, but about controlling her estate. I had 8 more recordings, each one documenting similar manipulation attempts. In one, Vanessa told Mom that I was planning to put her in a state-run facility and keep her house. In another, she claimed I was stealing Mom's jewelry and selling it. All lies designed to turn Mom against me and convince her to change her will. Russell asked why I hadn't mentioned these recordings earlier. I explained that my previous attorney, a family law lawyer I'd hired initially, had advised me not to reveal them unless absolutely necessary. She'd thought we could win without them. But that attorney had withdrawn from the case 2 weeks ago, citing a conflict of interest, and Russell had been assigned so late he hadn't known they existed. We spent the remaining lunch hour creating a strategy. Russell would play the recordings during my testimony, then argue that Vanessa's entire petition was a fraudulent attempt to gain control of Mom's estate. The recordings proved I wasn't abusive or incompetent. They proved Vanessa was the manipulative one. We returned to the courtroom with a plan. The afternoon session began with Diane calling 2 more witnesses, neighbors who testified they'd heard me yelling in my apartment. Neither could say definitively what I'd been yelling about or at whom, but Diane used their testimony to paint a picture of an angry, volatile environment. When it was Russell's turn, he called me to the stand. Diane's cross-examination would come after my direct testimony, so Russell had the opportunity to present my side first. He led me through my relationship with Mom, how I'd become her primary caregiver 3 years ago after she'd been diagnosed with dementia. I explained that Vanessa had been living in California at the time, pursuing her career as a pharmaceutical sales rep, while I'd been in Colorado near Mom. When Mom's condition worsened, I'd moved her into my apartment because I couldn't afford a care facility and wanted to keep her with family. Russell asked about the conditions in my apartment. I acknowledged the clutter but explained Mom's hoarding tendencies and her distress when I tried to clean. I'd learned to pick my battles, prioritizing her emotional comfort over perfect housekeeping. I explained her weight loss was due to the dementia affecting her appetite, not neglect. I detailed the meals I prepared, the supplements I'd researched, the creative ways I tried to get calories into her. Russell asked about my interactions with Vanessa. I described how she'd moved back to Colorado 6 months ago and had immediately begun criticizing every aspect of Mom's care. She'd never offered actual help, just judgment and ultimatums. When I'd pushed back, she'd threatened to take Mom away from me. Russell asked about Vanessa's phone calls with Mom. I said they'd become increasingly upsetting for Mom, focused on financial matters and accusations against me. Mom would be agitated for hours after talking to Vanessa. That's when I'd started screening calls, not to isolate Mom, but to protect her mental state. Then Russell asked if I'd documented any of this. I said yes. He entered my recordings into evidence over Diane's strenuous objection. Judge Brennan allowed them, noting that they were legally obtained and relevant to the question of who was actually acting in Mom's best interest. Russell played the first recording. The courtroom fell silent as Vanessa's voice filled the space, manipulating Mom, pressuring her about the will, making false accusations about me. Diane's face went white. Vanessa stared straight ahead, her jaw clenched. Russell played 3 more recordings, each one documenting Vanessa's manipulation tactics. In the last one, Vanessa explicitly said, "Mom, if you don't change your will, I'll have to take legal action. I'll prove Diana's unfit and get guardianship. Then I'll control everything anyway. You might as well make this easy and just give me what I deserve." The threat was unmistakable. Vanessa had been planning this guardianship petition for months as a backup plan to get control of Mom's estate. When the recordings finished, Russell asked if this was the behavior of someone genuinely concerned about their mother's welfare. I said no. This was someone concerned about money and control. Diane's cross-examination was aggressive but unfocused. She'd lost her narrative and was scrambling. She tried to suggest the recordings were edited or taken out of context. I explained they were complete, unedited conversations. She asked why I'd been recording in the first place if I wasn't planning to use them against Vanessa. I said I'd been documenting everything because Vanessa had been making threats, and I'd wanted proof of what was really happening. Diane asked if I'd told Mom I was recording. I said no, which was legal under state law. Diane tried to make this seem deceptive, but Russell objected successfully, noting that Vanessa hadn't informed Mom she was manipulating her either. The argument fell flat. Diane asked about my financial situation. She established that I'd quit my job as a medical assistant to care for Mom full-time and was currently living on Mom's Social Security income, plus a small stipend from her savings. Diane suggested this proved I was financially dependent on Mom and had motive to control her assets. I explained I'd sacrificed my career to provide care that would have cost tens of thousands monthly in a facility. My financial dependence was the result of caregiving, not the motive for it. Diane asked if I expected to inherit from Mom. I said I assumed I would inherit something, as would Vanessa, according to Mom's current will, which split everything equally between us. Diane's eyes narrowed. She asked if I was aware that Mom had recently expressed wishes to change her will. I said I was aware Vanessa had been trying to manipulate her into changing it, as the recordings proved, but Mom had never expressed such wishes to me independently. Judge Brennan interjected, asking if there was actually a new will. Diane admitted there wasn't, but said Vanessa had been trying to help Mom update her estate planning to reflect her true wishes. Russell objected, pointing out that the recordings proved Vanessa's help was actually coercion. Judge Brennan sustained the objection and told Diane to move on. The testimony continued for another hour. Diane tried to salvage her case by focusing on the apartment conditions and Mom's weight loss, but the recordings had fundamentally shifted the dynamic. It was now clear that Vanessa's petition wasn't about protecting Mom, but about controlling her money. When I finally stepped down, I felt cautiously hopeful for the first time. Russell called one rebuttal witness, Mom's home health aide, Patricia Simmons, who'd been visiting twice weekly for the past year. Patricia testified that she'd observed me providing excellent care for Mom in challenging circumstances. Patricia described my patience with Mom's difficult behaviors, my attention to her medical needs, and my emotional support during Mom's frightening moments of confusion. She said the apartment was cluttered but clean where it mattered. Mom was always bathed, dressed appropriately, and given her medications on time. Patricia had never witnessed me yelling at Mom or treating her roughly. She'd reported her observations to the home health agency, and her supervisor had told her my care was among the best they'd seen from family caregivers. Diane's cross-examination couldn't shake Patricia's testimony. She'd documented everything in her nursing notes, which Russell had subpoenaed. The notes corroborated everything she'd said. After Patricia stepped down, both attorneys gave closing arguments. Diane tried to refocus on the apartment conditions and medical concerns, arguing that even if Vanessa's motives were questionable, Mom still needed a more stable environment. She suggested appointing a professional guardian rather than giving custody to either daughter. Russell argued that the recordings proved this entire case was built on lies. Vanessa had manufactured a crisis to justify taking control of Mom's estate. I was providing good care under difficult circumstances. Any imperfections in that care were the result of limited resources and the inherent challenges of dementia care, not neglect or abuse. Appointing Vanessa as guardian would be rewarding her manipulative behavior. Appointing a professional guardian would be unnecessary and expensive, draining Mom's estate to pay for supervision I didn't need. Judge Brennan said she'd review everything and issue a written ruling within 5 business days. Court was adjourned. Vanessa left immediately without looking at me. Diane followed her out, both of them walking quickly past the small crowd of observers. Russell told me he thought we had a good chance, but warned that judges were unpredictable in guardianship cases. They had broad discretion and sometimes made decisions that seemed to contradict the evidence. I needed to prepare for any outcome. I spent the next 5 days in anxious limbo. Mom was still staying with me as the temporary orders had allowed, but I knew that could change instantly if Judge Brennan ruled against me. I cared for Mom with extra attentiveness, documenting everything, taking photos of her meals and activities just in case. Mom had good days and bad days. On good days, she remembered who I was, and we could have conversations about her childhood or her early marriage to my father who died 10 years ago. On bad days, she didn't know where she was or who I was, and I had to guide her gently through basic activities while she looked at me with frightened, confused eyes. Those were the days that broke my heart. The ruling came on Monday morning via email. Russell called me immediately after receiving it. Judge Brennan had denied Vanessa's petition in its entirety. She'd found that the evidence did not support claims of abuse, neglect, or financial exploitation. The recordings demonstrated that Vanessa's concerns were not made in good faith, but were motivated by desire to control the estate. Judge Brennan wrote that while my caregiving situation was imperfect, it was adequate and demonstrated genuine love and commitment. She noted that dementia care was inherently challenging and that minor household disorder did not constitute neglect. Most significantly, Judge Brennan had included a paragraph addressing Vanessa's conduct. She wrote that the recordings revealed a pattern of manipulation and attempted undue influence that was itself a form of elder abuse. Judge Brennan was referring Vanessa's actions to Adult Protective Services for investigation and possible prosecution. I sat down heavily after Russell read me that paragraph. Vanessa hadn't just lost. She was now under investigation for the very thing she'd accused me of. Russell explained that APS investigations could lead to criminal charges if they found evidence of financial exploitation or abuse. The recordings I'd made could be used in that investigation. Vanessa might face serious legal consequences. I felt relief and something darker, a satisfaction that tasted like vindication. Vanessa had tried to destroy me and had destroyed herself instead, but the victory felt hollow because Mom was still deteriorating, and nothing could change that reality. 2 weeks later, an APS investigator named Jordan Ellis contacted me. He'd been assigned to investigate the allegations against Vanessa based on Judge Brennan's referral. He wanted to interview me and review the recordings in their entirety. We met at a coffee shop near my apartment. Jordan was in his 40s, with graying hair and a tired face that suggested he'd seen too much human cruelty. He recorded our conversation with my permission as I walked him through the history of Vanessa's behavior. I provided copies of all 8 recordings, not just the 4 played in court. Jordan listened to them with increasing disgust. When they finished, he asked if Vanessa had succeeded in getting Mom to change her will. I said no. Mom's cognitive decline had progressed to the point where she wasn't legally competent to execute a new will, which had frustrated Vanessa immensely. Jordan asked if I believed Vanessa would have continued pressuring Mom if she'd remained competent. I said absolutely. Vanessa had been relentless. Jordan explained that Colorado law prohibited using fraud, duress, or undue influence to manipulate an elderly person's financial decisions. The recordings potentially showed Vanessa attempting exactly that. If APS found sufficient evidence, they'd refer the case to the district attorney for prosecution. He asked if I'd be willing to cooperate with a criminal investigation. I said yes without hesitation. Vanessa needed to be held accountable. Jordan left with copies of everything. He said the investigation would take several weeks, and he'd be in touch. Life returned to a new normal. I continued caring for Mom, who was blissfully unaware of the legal battles fought over her. Vanessa didn't contact me at all. I assumed Diane had advised her to stay away given the APS investigation. I didn't reach out either. As far as I was concerned, Vanessa had burned every bridge between us. 6 weeks after the ruling, Jordan called with an update. A PS had completed their investigation and found credible evidence of attempted financial exploitation. They were referring the case to the DA's office with a recommendation for prosecution. The DA would review and decide whether to file criminal charges. Jordan said it was a strong case. The recordings were clear evidence of manipulation, and the guardianship petition demonstrated a pattern of escalating attempts to control Mom's assets. 3 months after Judge Brennan's ruling, Vanessa was charged with attempted exploitation of an at-risk adult, a felony in Colorado. Diane Keller had withdrawn as her attorney citing the criminal charges, and Vanessa had to hire a criminal defense lawyer. The case moved slowly through the system. Vanessa pleaded not guilty, and her attorney filed motions challenging the admissibility of the recordings. All the motions were denied. Colorado's one-party consent law was clear, and I'd been a party to every conversation I'd recorded. The recordings were legal evidence of criminal conduct. 8 months after the charges were filed, Vanessa's attorney approached the DA about a plea deal. Vanessa would plead guilty to a reduced charge of attempted theft in exchange for probation and restitution. The DA consulted with me before accepting. I was asked if I wanted to see Vanessa go to prison. I thought about it carefully. Prison wouldn't undo the damage Vanessa had tried to cause. It wouldn't restore the relationship we'd once had as sisters. It wouldn't help Mom, who barely remembered having 2 daughters anymore. But accountability mattered. Vanessa needed to face consequences for her actions. I told the DA I'd accept the plea deal on one condition. Vanessa had to agree to a permanent restraining order preventing her from contacting Mom or me, and she had to waive any claim to Mom's estate. If Vanessa wanted to avoid prison, she'd have to give up the money she'd been so desperate to control. The DA presented my terms to Vanessa's attorney. After 2 days of negotiation, Vanessa agreed. She pleaded guilty to attempted theft, received 3 years probation, and signed documents relinquishing any inheritance rights. She was also ordered to pay $15,000 in restitution to cover my legal fees and other costs associated with her false guardianship petition. The restraining order was made permanent. Vanessa would never be allowed to contact Mom or me again. The plea hearing was brief. I attended to see it finalized. Vanessa stood before the judge looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Her expensive suit was gone, replaced by a simple dress. Her hair hung loose around her shoulders. When the judge asked if she understood the terms of the plea, Vanessa's voice was barely audible. After the judge accepted the plea and imposed sentence, Vanessa glanced at me once. I couldn't read her expression. Regret? Anger? Resentment? Maybe all 3. I felt nothing looking back at her. The sister I'd known growing up was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. Someone who'd valued money more than family. Someone who'd been willing to destroy me to get what she wanted. We left the courthouse separately. I never saw Vanessa again. Mom's condition continued to decline over the following year. Her lucid moments became rarer. She stopped recognizing me consistently. Some days she thought I was her sister. Other days she didn't know me at all. I continued caring for her at home with increased help from Patricia and other aides as Mom's needs grew. The money Vanessa had wanted so badly went toward Mom's care, paying for the support services that allowed her to stay comfortable at home. 18 months after the court hearing, Mom passed away peacefully in her sleep. I was holding her hand when she went. She was 79 years old. The funeral was small. A few of Mom's elderly friends, some cousins, Patricia, and the other aides who'd helped care for her. Vanessa wasn't allowed to attend due to the restraining order. I don't know if she even knew Mom had died. Mom's will was executed as originally written. Her estate was divided equally between Vanessa and me, as Mom had always intended before Vanessa tried to manipulate her. But Vanessa had signed away her inheritance rights as part of the plea deal. Her half went to a dementia research foundation, designated in the updated paperwork. I inherited Mom's house, her savings, and her personal possessions. The total value was just over $2 million. I used some of it to pay off my debts and establish a stable financial foundation. The rest I invested carefully. I went back to school and became a geriatric care advocate, helping other families navigate the complex challenges of caring for elderly parents with dementia. I specialized in cases where family members were fighting over guardianship or estates. I'd lived through it and understood the dynamics. My clients appreciated having an advocate who'd been in their shoes. I testified as an expert witness in several guardianship cases, and my recordings became an example used in elder law seminars about documenting abuse. Some people criticized me for recording Vanessa without her knowledge. They called it a violation of privacy, a betrayal of family trust. I didn't agree. Vanessa had violated Mom's trust by manipulating her. She'd betrayed our family by prioritizing money over Mom's welfare. Recording her was the only way to prove what was really happening. It had protected Mom and held Vanessa accountable. I'd do it again without hesitation. 3 years after Mom's death, I received a letter forwarded through my attorney. It was from Vanessa. She'd completed her probation and wanted to apologize. The letter was 2 pages of careful language expressing regret for her actions and the harm she'd caused. She wrote that she'd been in therapy and had come to understand that her behavior had been driven by financial stress and resentment she'd been carrying for years. She claimed she'd never intended to actually hurt Mom or me, that things had spiraled out of control. She asked if we could meet and try to rebuild some kind of relationship. I read the letter twice, then filed it away. I didn't respond. Some relationships couldn't be rebuilt. Vanessa had shown me who she was when money was at stake. She'd been willing to lie, manipulate, and destroy to get what she wanted. An apology didn't change that fundamental truth. I'd forgiven her in the sense that I no longer carried anger or resentment, but forgiveness didn't mean reconciliation. It didn't mean giving her another opportunity to hurt me. 5 years after the court hearing, I was working with a client whose sister was trying to gain guardianship through similar tactics. The pattern was familiar: false accusations of abuse, manufactured evidence, manipulation of the elderly parent. I knew exactly how to fight it. We documented everything. We obtained recordings of the sister's manipulative phone calls. We built an airtight case. When we went to court, the judge denied the guardianship petition within hours of hearing our evidence. My client kept custody of her mother. The sister faced an APS investigation. Justice was served again. After the hearing, my client hugged me and cried with relief. She said I'd saved her family. I told her she'd saved it herself by being brave enough to fight back and smart enough to document the truth. I thought about Mom during that conversation, about how she deserved better than to have her daughters fighting over her money while she was losing herself to dementia, about how Vanessa's greed had poisoned what should have been a time for family to come together in support and love. I thought about the recordings that had changed everything. Those hours of audio had been my weapon and my shield. They'd proven the truth when everything else could be twisted and denied. They'd protected Mom from Vanessa's manipulation and protected me from Vanessa's lies. That evening, I visited Mom's grave for the first time in months. I brought flowers and sat on the grass beside her headstone. I told her about the case I'd won, about the family I'd helped stay together. I told her I was doing okay, that I'd built a good life from the wreckage Vanessa had tried to create. I told her I missed her, especially the version of her that had existed before dementia stole her away, the mom who'd been strong and funny and wise. I told her about Vanessa's letter and my decision not to respond. I hoped Mom would understand. Family was important, but not at the cost of your own well-being. Not when someone had proven they'd sacrifice you for their own gain. As the sun set, I stood and brushed grass from my jeans. I placed my hand on Mom's headstone and made a promise. I'd keep fighting for families like ours. I'd keep documenting the truth and exposing the manipulators. I'd make sure other elderly parents were protected from children who saw them as assets rather than people. It was the best way I knew to honor Mom's memory. 6 years after Vanessa testified I was mentally unfit, I stood in a different courtroom as an expert witness in my 50th guardianship case. I played recordings of an adult son manipulating his elderly father and watched the judge's expression shift from skepticism to anger. The guardianship petition was denied. The son was referred for investigation. Another family was protected. Justice was served again. That night, I went home to my small house, the one I'd bought with part of Mom's inheritance. I poured a glass of wine and sat on my porch watching the sunset. I thought about the journey that had started with Vanessa's betrayal and led to this work that gave my life purpose. I thought about the recorder in my pocket that I carried to every case, ready to document truth whenever necessary. I raised my glass toward the darkening sky, toward wherever Mom might be, and whispered, "We won." And somehow I knew she heard me. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.